Have you ever wondered what really separates the highest achievers from everyone else? You know, we love to think it's all about raw talent or just grinding harder than anyone. But what if that's not the whole story? Not even close. Malcolm Gladwell's amazing book, Outliers, completely flips that idea on its head. So today, we are going to dive deep into the hidden forces he says truly shape success, and a lot of them are things you've probably never even considered.
So, here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to bust the myth of the lone genius. Then, we'll get into the super famous 10,000-hour rule. After that, we'll explore the wild ways our cultural backgrounds shape us, why timing can be literally everything, and finally, we'll pull it all together with the biggest lessons you can take away from the book.
All right, let's jump right in with part one, the myth of success. Now, the main idea here is both simple and, honestly, pretty powerful. Context is king. Where you come from, when you were born, the lucky breaks and open doors you got, all of these things matter so much more than we usually give them credit for.
So Gladwell really makes us stop and ask ourselves, is success truly just about what's inside a person? I mean, we all love that story, right? The classic underdog, the self-made person who makes it against all odds. But what Outliers argues is that, well, that story is mostly a fantasy.
This is where all those hidden forces come into play. It's about opportunity, it's about culture, and yes, sometimes it's about just pure dumb luck. Okay, take Gladwell's famous example about Canadian hockey players. It turns out a huge chunk of elite players are born in January, February, or March. Why? It's simple, really. The age cutoff for youth hockey is January 1st. So a kid born in January is almost a whole year older, bigger, and more developed than a kid born in December in the same league.
And that right there is the perfect example of what's called a cumulative advantage. That tiny, completely random edge of being born a few months earlier starts a snowball effect. That small initial advantage gets you picked for the better teams, which means you get more practice time and better coaching. And over the years, what started as a small difference becomes a massive one. It was never about being born a better player, it was about getting a head start.
Okay, so if opportunity is the first major ingredient in the recipe for success, what's the second? Well, that brings us to maybe the most famous idea from Outliers ever, the 10,000-hour rule. This is all about the incredible power of practice. So, according to Gladwell, the magic number for becoming a true expert is 10,000. That's about how many hours of focused, dedicated practice it takes to become truly world-class at something. And we're not just talking about phoning it in. This is about practice that has intense focus and real purpose. Just think about the Beatles for a second. Long before they were household names, they were paying their dues in these gritty, rough clubs in Hamburg, Germany. I'm talking about playing 8-hour sets, night after night after night. That absolutely grueling schedule, that was their 10,000 hours. It's where they hammered out their sound and became the incredible live performers who would one day take over the world. Or hey, look at Bill Gates. As a teenager, he got access to a university mainframe computer in the 1960s. For perspective, that's like a kid today getting their hands on a full-blown quantum computer. It was an unbelievable opportunity that let him rack up his 10,000 hours of programming practice years before almost anyone else's age. It was just the perfect storm of luck, opportunity, and then a ton of practice. You know, even a so-called natural genius like Mozart doesn't get a pass on this rule. We think of him as this child prodigy, and he was, for sure. But his truly revolutionary, mind-blowing masterpieces, those came way later, after he'd already put in more than a decade of non-stop, intense composing. Yeah, his early stuff was impressive for a kid, but his legendary status, that was earned with those 10,000 hours.
But here's the absolute key. It's not just any old practice. It has to be deliberate practice. And as you can see here, that means you're systematically pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. You're analyzing and refining what you do instead of just repeating it. And you are ruthlessly targeting your specific weaknesses. It's all about the quality of the hours, not just the quantity.
Okay, now we're getting to one of the most fascinating and maybe controversial parts of the book, our cultural legacies. This is all about the invisible scripts and traditions that are handed down to us by our ancestors and how they can have a massive impact on our chances of success. Here's a pretty wild example of this. Gladwell actually connects airline safety records to national culture. He discovered that in cultures with what's called a high power distance, basically where you just don't question authority figures, co-pilots were often too intimidated to speak up and correct a captain's mistake, sometimes with tragic, fatal results. But when those exact same airlines retrained their crews to communicate more directly and openly, like you see on the right, their crash rates plummeted. It's just a shocking reminder that our cultural baggage can have literal life-or-death stakes. And here's another really powerful cultural connection he makes. Gladwell argues that there's a link between the culture that grows out of farming rice paddies and high achievement in math. Think about it. Rice farming is incredibly complex, precise work. It demands patience and persistence. There's this direct, clear correlation between your effort and your reward. And those are the exact same virtues you need to sit down and grind through a tough math problem. It's a work ethic that's literally passed down through generations.
This all ties into this idea of meaningful work. Gladwell gives this great example, contrasting the monotonous, soul-crushing work on a factory line with the complex, independent work of, say, a garment entrepreneur in New York. When our work is complex, when it's autonomous, and when there's a clear link between how hard we work and the reward we get, it fuels us. It builds a kind of resilience and a drive to succeed that repetitive, meaningless labor just can't.
And that brings us to our next huge factor, timing. Gladwell's argument here is pretty mind-blowing. It's that when you are born can be every bit as important as who you are or how hard you work. I mean, this timeline really says it all. You can see that tech pioneers like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were born right around 1955, and that put them in their early 20s in 1975, the exact moment the personal computer revolution was kicking off. They were young enough to get it and embrace this brand new technology, but they were also just old enough to take advantage of it. If they were born a few years earlier, they might have been too set in their ways. A few years later, they would have missed the boat. Their birth year put them in the absolute perfect spot at the perfect time.
So, we've looked at how opportunity, thousands of hours of practice, our cultural background, and just plain timing all play these huge roles. But what does all of this actually mean for us, right now? Let's wrap it all up with the key lessons from Outliers. Okay, so here are the big takeaways. First, success is often a gift. It's a product of the world and the time we grow up in. Second, mastery takes a long time. There are just no shortcuts to getting those 10,000 hours in. Third, where we come from really, truly matters. Our cultural inheritance helps shape our path. Fourth, advantages build on each other. Those small head starts can lead to massive victories down the road. And finally, number 5, meaningful work is what fuels the entire journey. Having a purpose is what keeps us all going.
At the end of the day, Outliers isn't a book that says hard work and talent don't matter. Of course they do. But what it does is it gives us a brand new lens to see success through. It's not just about what we have inside of us. It's about being aware enough to see the opportunities that are all around us. It's about understanding the legacy we've been given and the specific moment in history we happen to occupy. And that really leaves us with a powerful question. Now that we can see these hidden forces at play, how can we start to create more of these opportunities for everyone to succeed?